Enlightenment Lessons from the Buddha. Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. This is a lesson we understand from the life of the Buddha. When he was still a prince living in the royal palace, neither his father nor Princess Yasodhara wanted him to become a monk. His father, the king, always tried various ways to keep him, wishing for him to succeed to the throne. As soon as he grew up, the king hastily arranged his marriage and created many amusements to make him forget his desire to renounce the world. But even with all the pleasures, the throne ready, he couldn't be held back. The prince escaped, leaving everything behind. Just this alone, bowing to him for a lifetime, would still not be enough. Let's check ourselves. How much are we bound compared to his constraints? Much less and lighter, yet we cannot overcome. Meanwhile, he, with so many bindings, still surpassed them all. He overcame all obstacles, left the city to address the great matter of life and death. Not just for himself, but for the benefit of all beings. That is truly the meaning of being in the world, but not bound by the world. That strength is extraordinary spiritual strength, far beyond the physical strength of the mightiest athlete in the world. Zen Buddhism tells the story of Zen Master Tom and elder men. On their way to the high river, they saw a fisherman catch a big fish. The fish jumped out of the net. Zen Master Tom exclaimed, "Great, brother men, just like a Zen monk." Elder men replied, "It would be better if it hadn't been caught in the net in the first place." Zen Master Tom said, "Brother men, you still haven't awakened." Elder men didn't understand until late at night when he realized it. Which case do you choose? Many think like elder men that it would be better not to be caught in the net initially, avoiding the effort of escaping. This reasoning sounds good initially, but upon reflection, it's not necessarily true. The reality is that we are in the net, and jumping out from within it is what counts. If we only theorize, we will remain in the net for life. That's why Zen Master Tom said that brother men hadn't awakened. This shows us that even sophisticated arguments or worldly knowledge can easily deceive. Hearing something that seems logical, but in reality, it's not. We are in the net of life and death, and the important thing is to skillfully escape, which is precious. If we only theorize that it would have been better not to get caught in the net, and why bother now to find a way out, we will stay in the net for life. We are often deceived by arguments based on worldly knowledge, which always exist in relative terms. They may seem logical but need deeper examination to avoid being misled. Let us remember that we are in the net of the world, in the mire of life and death, and being able to escape is what makes one truly skilled. This is a lesson for all beings to follow as a shining example. The Buddha did not descend like deities who immediately become Buddhas, but he was in the world like a human. He was born, grew up, had parents, and enjoyed worldly pleasures but still transcended them. From this, we see that the Buddha was a human like everyone else and still attained enlightenment. We can follow his example and become enlightened like him. If he had descended and immediately become a Buddha, today, not many would practice to attain enlightenment because they would think he is too superhuman, too holy, and we are ordinary and cannot follow. He manifested as a human who knew how to transcend the world. As in the story of his visit to the 4 gates of the city, upon seeing the sights of old age, sickness, and death, he was awakened. The image of a liberated monk drove him to renounce the world seeking liberation. Conversely, how many times have we seen old age, sickness, and death, and how much have we awakened? Thanks to the Buddha going ahead, he left us with the complete formula and path to enlightenment. Yet we still hesitate to follow, while he had to groping in the dark, puzzled and searching for ways to solve the problem. He saw that people in the world inevitably faced old age, sickness, and death. He asked Channa, "Is it true that everyone in this world must face old age, sickness, and death?" Channa replied, "Yes, Prince, it is so." At that moment, he decided to find a way to solve this problem, refusing to accept it. That is his difference. We see our ancestors face this, so we accept it as normal. But he did not accept it and determined to find a way out, to find the cause of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Finding the cause, he found the solution and succeeded. The principle of the 12 links of dependent origination he discovered is the cause of life and death. Cutting off the 12 links is liberation. The Buddha has opened the path and left us the formula. So we have only one task, which is to follow the lesson of enlightenment. That is not to let our lives be lost in this cycle of birth and death. The enlightened are different from the deluded in that they know how to rise above. Reading the history of the Buddha, we see that when he renounced the world and sought the path, initially on his way to Vaisali, he studied under the sage Bhagirath. This group practiced asceticism, with some standing on one leg all day, some lying on thorny ground or nets, some lying on fire. Compared to them, we cannot match their ascetic efforts. The pity is that they lacked the right view and did not find a clear path to liberation. At that time he asked them, "Why do you practice asceticism?" Bhagirath replied, "We seek to eliminate suffering and be reborn in heaven." He said, "Even though deities enjoy many pleasures, when their merit runs out, they still fall back into the cycle of rebirth and suffer. Your practice is trading suffering for temporary pleasure. Like sailors enduring hardships for treasures or kings waging wars for land, but these treasures and lands are not always theirs." Their ideal was not the ultimate path to liberation. It was just temporary joy, not the ultimate path to liberation. So he wasn't satisfied and continued searching for the path to enlightenment. Next, he met the sage Alara Kalama, who taught the meditation of the realm of nothingness. To the world, this meditation is very high. Even a Buddhist might not reach this level, because this was the Buddha's last life. In a short time, he learned all the teachings of this master. He also attained the state of meditation in the realm of nothingness, comprehending and realizing what the master taught, not just theoretically. Finally, he asked, "Alara Kalama, is this the ultimate level of the doctrine you have realized and live in this achievement?" The sage replied, "Yes, this is the doctrine I have realized and live in this achievement. This is the deepest and widest level of the doctrine." He said, "Alara Kalama, I have realized and also live in this achievement." In the worldly sense, if a student quickly learns all the teacher's specialties, the teacher would not be happy and might be envious. Typically, a worldly teacher keeps some skills for himself and doesn't teach everything to his student. But this sage was very kind. Hearing his student's statement, he wasn't envious but joyfully invited the student to stay and share the teaching. The sage said, "Alara Kalama, I am delighted to meet a worthy fellow practitioner like you." This is a point that both lay people and monastics should learn. This lesson shows that having a fellow practitioner like this is excellent, but often people are envious, afraid that others will be as good or better than them. This is not good. Here, the sage was happy and said, "The doctrine I have realized and proclaimed, you have also realized and live in this achievement. I have realized it with wisdom and proclaim it. What I know, you also know, and vice versa. I am as you are, so let us join forces to lead this group of ascetics." This is something that commands our deep respect. Seeing a student who is equal to oneself, yet feeling no jealousy and inviting him to stay and teach together, is truly the heart of a true teacher. At that time, the prince did not accept it because he saw that this teaching did not fulfill the ultimate path of liberation. So he continued to search and meet the ascetic Uddaka Ramaputta, also called Uddaka Ramaputta, in the forest outside Rajagaha. This sage taught him the meditation of the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception, the highest meditation in the world. As before, it did not take him long to learn everything from the teacher and attain the highest level of meditation. However, he also saw that this was not the ultimate fulfillment. In the Sutra Past and Present Causes, he narrated a segment where he asked the sage, "The meditation of neither perception nor non-perception that the master talks about, is there a self or not? If there is no self, it is not called neither perception nor non-perception. If there is a self, does this self know or not know? If it does not know, it is the same as wood and stone. If it knows, the mind that knows is involved in conditions. When the mind is involved in conditions, it becomes attached, and if it is attached, it is not liberation." The sage heard him speak but remained silent, not answering, knowing it was not the ultimate truth, so he finally left. This is also an enlightening lesson for us. If someone has a bit of desire for fame, encountering this situation, they would immediately think it is enough and stay, because they are equal to the teacher and can share the teaching with the teacher. But he saw that staying would not lead to further progress, not reaching liberation. He, upon realizing that the path was not ultimate, was ready to leave without regret. In the end, he left everything behind and returned to himself. He practiced austerities for 6 years, seeing no results. He let go and sat in meditation under the Bodhi tree for 49 days and nights, and finally achieved complete enlightenment. Therefore, he later declared, "I learned the path without a teacher." Because this path was not taught by anyone, other paths he followed were guided by teachers, but he left them all. After attaining enlightenment, on the way from the Bodhi tree to the city of Gaya, the ascetic Upaka, seeing the Buddha's radiant face, was impressed and asked, "Friend, your senses are clear, your complexion is bright. Who did you renounce the world with? Who is your teacher, and whose teaching do you spread?" The Buddha replied with a verse, "The Tathagata has surpassed all, has comprehended all, has abandoned all constraints, given up all, no longer attached. Having abandoned everything myself, I have no teacher." He learned the path without a teacher, achieving success by surpassing all. That means true enlightenment comes from within oneself, not from outside. No one can replace this for oneself. Enlightenment comes from the enlightened mind, not found outside. A teacher cannot enlighten one, nor can scriptures. One can study scriptures, but enlightenment is not in the scriptures. Scriptures are just written records of enlightenment, not enlightenment itself. The letters A, B, C cannot bring enlightenment. Nowadays, people easily misunderstand this, focusing on analyzing scriptures and the meaning of enlightenment without seeking enlightenment within themselves. This leads to going astray, losing the root, and never finding enlightenment. Sometimes, in the process of searching and researching, one becomes tired, leading not only to not finding enlightenment but also to more afflictions. For example, if you chant or practice too much, you may become tired, and if someone says something upsetting, you are more likely to get angry than usual. When we understand the true meaning of enlightenment not being from outside, we must seek it within our own mind to achieve enlightenment. Because the enlightened nature is right within each being's mind, that is the inherently pure, clear, and untainted nature, called Buddha nature. This is where everyone needs to discover and live again, the true place of enlightenment. Seeking enlightenment outside is just a means, enlightenment through words. In the Sutra, Supreme Why Nature of the Tathagata, it is said, "All Tathagatas in the past, when still on the path of practice before attaining Buddhahood, knew that the nature of beings is pure but is clouded by defilements." The Tathagatas all think that defilements do not enter the pure nature of beings. These defilements obstruct from outside due to delusional thinking. We speak the profound and wonderful Dharma to eliminate defilements for them. We should not look down on beings, but with great compassion, respect, and revere them like teachers. With prajna, wisdom, and great compassion, bodhisattvas rely on these 5 methods to attain the position of non-retreat. While still bodhisattvas practicing the Buddha path, they clearly knew that the nature of beings is pure, inherently possessing Buddha nature, so they did not dare to look down on beings. He said we should not look down on anyone. Toward beings, respect should arise. If so, bodhisattvas enter the position of non-retreat. If you understand this deeply and live together well, not daring to look down on anyone. Like the bodhisattva never disparaging in the Lotus Sutra, who did not dare to look down on anyone because he saw that everyone has Buddha nature. People differ due to delusion and individual karma. Buddha nature has no forms, no big or small, black or white, thus no differences. So do not look down on anyone. Whenever we have contempt for someone, our Buddha nature is obscured. This is the truth. This is not from reasoning, but it is inherently so. Enlightened beings see it as it is. The truth is that every being and all of us have an inherently pure, clear nature. Although obscured by defilements, they only obstruct from the outside and have no attachment inside. Because of this lack of attachment, when people practice in accordance, they immediately achieve enlightenment. If there were attachment, it would ruin the enlightened nature, causing impermanence and hindering enlightenment. But here, although defilements are present, they only stick outside, like dust on a mirror that does not affect its reflection. If we wipe the dust, the mirror shines again. We often use worldly language saying, "I clean the mirror." This is not accurate. If the mirror could be cleaned, it would not be a mirror anymore. Cleaning it would remove its brightness. The truth is that we clean the dust, not the mirror. But worldly language often says, cleaning the mirror. The correct term should be cleaning the dust. Removing the dust makes the mirror bright again, not cleaning the mirror itself. Similarly, defilements attach outside. Once filtered, the pure nature manifests, not because of our practice that it shines. Zen often emphasizes the spirit of no attainment, meaning there is nothing to attain, not through practice that it is attained. Seeing attainment as a disease. Zen always reminds that considering oneself as having attained is a disease because there is nothing to attain. For example, if enlightenment arises, it is inherently present. Each person has an inherently pure nature, which is the bright, noble root. Why not live with this nobility but with external defilements and lament? The Buddhas always remind beings to constantly recall their inherently pure, clear nature to return to the source. This enlightenment cannot be sought outside, but must be found within oneself. Tôn Si Tuệ Trung in Vietnam, though a layperson, reached a high level of enlightenment. This is an example to remind Buddhists not to feel inferior, thinking lay people cannot reach enlightenment. Tôn Si Tuệ Trung, originally a general, despite being busy, still achieved enlightenment. Tôn Si composed a verse to remind everyone of this idea. Seeking the missing place with Tao Ke, the essence is bright and round, not confused. Regardless of far or near, the moon still shines low and high, the wind blows without preference. Autumn's light manifests as black and white according to conditions. The blooming lotus's fragrance is not tainted. The ancient music should be played, do not seek the south, north, east, or west. Searching for the hermitage of Tao Ke, the essence bright and round, never diluted. The verse means that there is no need to seek out the hermitage where Bodhidharma, the patriarch, stayed, or the retreat of the sixth patriarch that is far away, because the essence that is bright and round has never been diluted, and it is not something to search for outside. Whether near or far, the moon always shines high and low, and the wind blows without discrimination. The moonlight shines equally regardless of distance. The wind blows without preference for high or low places, maintaining equality. Autumn light, whether black or white, manifests according to conditions. The lotus blooms with a fragrant scent but is not tainted by mud. The lotus grows from mud and its fragrance spreads without being tainted by the mud, symbolizing that our enlightened nature exists in the mire of the world without being sullied. We should seek enlightenment in this way, not by searching far and wide. Ancient music should be played and sung, not searching for the east, west, south, or north. There's no need to seek enlightenment at the Shaolin Temple or Tao Ke. Similarly, one does not need to go to Bodh Gaya to find enlightenment. These are merely historical sites. We visit them to pay homage to the Buddha and patriarchs, not to seek enlightenment there. True enlightenment is within oneself. This reminds us to look within rather than search outside. The essence is inherently bright and round, never diluted, and we must remember to live by it. Defilements cannot reach it. Therefore, we must let go of external illusory things so that the inner light shines naturally. Hence, the reminder not to search for the east, west, south, or north. Seeking outside only leads to further confusion. We should look for enlightenment within our own mind, not outside. The mind that seeks is the very thing that needs to be found. We often search for this or that, but we only need to find the mind that searches. However, people typically search outside, neglecting the seeking mind, which is the root. Zen calls this seeking the mind with the mind. Once we remember this seeking mind, it immediately becomes clear, and that is enough. In summary, we must turn back to our own mind. The Buddha teaches in the Diamond Sutra, a bodhisattva generates the mind of unsurpassed perfect enlightenment without dwelling anywhere. Yet we generate the mind, but always need a place to dwell. Here the teaching is to generate the mind without dwelling anywhere. What does it mean to not dwell anywhere? It means letting go of everything and returning to oneself. Dwelling somewhere is external. Generating the mind without dwelling means letting go of everything and not dwelling anywhere. Returning to oneself is the Bodhi mind. Learning the way is very simple, but we often refuse simplicity, wanting to dwell here and there, dwelling on all sorts of things, making it complicated. When we let go of everything, we return to ourselves. As the Diamond Sutra says, a bodhisattva does not dwell anywhere. It means to settle the mind without dwelling anywhere, and that is settling. Settling without dwelling is the bodhi mind. Dwelling means still running, so one needs to settle. Letting go of everything, dwelling nowhere, means the mind naturally settles, which is the bodhi mind. Learning enlightenment is simply learning this, nothing else. This is an important point. Reading the history of the Buddha, we see that when he was dissatisfied with ascetic practices, he received a bowl of milk porridge from Sujata, then sat at the Vajra throne, vowing, "If I do not achieve enlightenment, I will not leave this place." This is a great lesson in enlightenment for us. We should follow his example, but within our capacity. Since this was his last life before becoming a Buddha, his strength was fully sufficient to become a Buddha. Our strength is not yet equal to the Buddha's, so we cannot mimic him entirely. But here, we should learn the spirit of advancing without retreating. Do not mimic sitting in meditation today, refusing to rise until enlightenment is achieved. Measure your strength. Those who aspire to study the way need to learn the spirit of advancing, which means the longer one studies the way, the deeper the understanding, and the fewer the afflictions, not more. Studying the way longer should increase clarity, not confusion. This is the spirit to follow, always advancing without retreating. Check yourself. How many years have you been studying the way? Are your afflictions increasing or decreasing? If not decreasing or staying the same, it is not acceptable. At least there should be some progress, not stagnation. This is the spirit to follow, always advancing. When facing difficulties, your resolve should become firmer, not giving up. The more difficult it is, the stronger your resolve should be, like a fish leaping out of a net. Every year, on the anniversary of the Buddha's enlightenment, we should advance deeper into the way, offering this heart to the Buddha and paying homage meaningfully. Always remember the 4 great vows to motivate oneself. Sentient beings are boundless. I vow to save them all. Sentient beings, though boundless and limitless, must be saved without leaving any behind. Do not refuse to save someone you dislike. This is the spirit of advancing. A bodhisattva vows to save all beings, whether agreeable or not just those who listen to him. Cultivate a broad mind to progress. This is also the spirit of a true Buddhist in the temple. Following this spirit, living together becomes joyful. Vowing to save all beings means not neglecting any brother or sister in the temple. Occasionally feeling a bit sad or happy should be forgotten. Understanding this, always advance, never retreat. Endless afflictions, I vow to cut off. Vowing to cut off all afflictions, not leaving any behind. Many Buddhists fear that cutting off all afflictions will lead to boredom. According to this spirit, cut off completely, never stopping until it's done. Usually in the world, if someone makes us angry, we might say, "I will tolerate this time but not the next." This means cutting off the first instance but not the subsequent ones. Here, we vow to cut off completely, a spirit of advancing without retreating. Innumerable Dharma doors, I vow to learn them all. This means vowing to learn all Dharma methods, not just a few, but learning endlessly. People often think that studying a few sutras is enough, but here, the more one studies, the more one realizes one's ignorance. Without complacency, there will always be progress. Supreme Buddha Way, I vow to achieve it. Even though the Buddha Way is supreme, we still vow to achieve it, not just settling for heavenly rewards. Vow to practice until Buddhahood is attained. These are the 4 great vows to broaden the mind of the practitioner, always advancing without retreating. The Vimalakirti Sutra says, "A straightforward mind is the way place." If we learn the way properly, we quickly see good results. A straightforward mind from the beginning of the practice until the end of this life. Maintaining one straightforward mind guarantees progress in learning the Buddha's teachings. But often, we are not like this. When we first develop the mind, we are very determined, unstoppable. But after some time in the temple, even minor obstacles can stop us. This means the mind has become curved. We must maintain a straightforward mind as the way place. Here and now is the way place, not searching far away. Learning the Buddha's teachings in this spirit is valuable enlightenment lessons. Do you see that learning these 3 points is enough for a lifetime? Let me remind you of Zen Master Dogen's words. To study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. Studying the way primarily means studying the self, nothing else. It means clarifying oneself, understanding one's delusions, knowing what is real and unreal, what is mistaken and not mistaken, to clarify oneself. The clearer we are about ourselves, the clearer the way becomes. If we only focus on learning this and that, searching here and there, we may never find the way. Understanding delusion is enlightenment because enlightenment is understanding delusion. The Buddha also became a Buddha from being a sentient being. All sentient beings have Buddha nature, meaning they have an enlightened nature. This is confirmed by the Buddha in the Mahaparinirvana Sutra. So everyone has an origin of enlightenment and wisdom like the Buddha, not just as deluded beings. Our true homeland is the enlightened nature, not the deluded nature of sentient beings. Therefore, we must return to the enlightened homeland, not remain in delusion. We cannot remain as wandering guests forever. As the Lotus Sutra says, the prodigal son is originally the son of a wealthy elder, not a beggar. He owns a vast inheritance. Therefore, we must return to claim this inheritance, not continue begging for daily sustenance. Let me remind you of the Buddha's words upon attaining enlightenment. Through many lifetimes in the cycle of birth and death, the Tathagata has wandered endlessly. The Tathagata has searched for the builder of this house but could not find him. Life after life, this existence has been full of suffering. O house builder, the Tathagata has found you. From now on, you shall not build this house again. All the rafters are broken and the ridgepole is shattered. The Tathagata has attained the unconditioned, the cessation of craving. This declaration is the proclamation of victory over the cycle of rebirth. The Buddha recounted how he had wandered through many lifetimes, just as we have done countless times. Have we seen enough yet? We still wish to continue. The Buddha said that he had searched endlessly for the builder of this house, leading to repeated cycles of birth and death. Then he said, O house builder, the Tathagata has found you. You shall not build this house again. Here, he achieved liberation, no longer subject to birth and death, definitively ending the construction of the five aggregates. He realized the unconditioned, eradicating all craving, thus making this the proclamation of victory over the cycle of rebirth. Every student of the Buddha must eventually make such a proclamation of victory. In human history, this was the first time the Buddha initiated the path of enlightenment in the world. He was a historical figure, unlike Buddhas such as Kassapa or Dipankara, who are from the distant past. Therefore, his enlightenment is a highly significant event. This serves as a reminder to all of us not to continue following this path of delusion, but to turn back and not be deceived by the house builder. Even if we have not yet achieved what the Buddha did, we must at least recognize it to avoid being misled. We all have great fortune in having someone who has gone before us and shown the way, so we don't have to fumble in the dark as the Buddha did. We already have a map and have overcome a difficult phase, making our practice much easier than it was for the Buddha. If we still refuse to follow the path, it is indeed blameworthy. Therefore, each of us should remember that we have wandered through the cycle of rebirth for too long, and now it is time to return. There is no loss or regret in doing so. It is enough. If we possess the knowledge of past lives or carefully examine our experiences, we will see that we have traversed all 6 realms of rebirth without missing any. Thus, it is time to stop now without any regrets.